welcome all. We appreciate you joining us for It's Covered, the insurance podcast, because if you think that insurance is boring, then you are not doing it properly. I'm one of your hosts, Paul. We are joined as always by Mel. How's it going, man?
It's going good. Hello, everyone.
Good. So, yeah, we actually missed last week, and that was a good 95% my fault. But that was I was actually on our normal night to record. I was actually doing a last minute recording for my other podcast, and so we got together the next day and decided on a time that we were going to not re-record, but actually record the first time. And that day came, and that's when I texted you. It's like, this is not going to work. I have the article, let me just, when I have 20 minutes, I'm going to just record it solo, because today is looking just kind of crazy. And so the part I don't think I told you was that I recorded this episode twice, and it was terrible both times. And I was just like, I think that the audience would much rather us be a week late and not be terrible.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
And I hope you're right.
So yeah, absolutely. And so we're going to, jump into the topic today. And, it was actually an article it was an Associated Press article, but I found it through the Insurance Journal, and we will link to that in our show notes if you are interested in taking a look at it. And this really hits close to home, because we are in the Houston area. Our office is actually in a small town outside of Houston that's kind of close to the Brazos River. And so we were really in the middle of everything when it came to flooding during Harvey. And that's what this article is about. The title is Texas Developers' Use of Fill for Flood Resilience Scrutinized Post Harvey. And we're not gonna read this entire thing. I'm certainly not gonna narrate all the slimes I've killed, but starting a little bit from the beginning. Texas home developers' practice of using dirt to raise homes above a floodplain is drawing increased scrutiny as experts question flood resilience measures after Hurricane Harvey. Some experts argued using dirt or fill reduces storage for stormwaters and worsens flooding, the Houston Chronicle reported. Now, right away, one of the problems with this article is we don't link. They never tell us who these experts are. And right. The Chronicle article is not linked. And so I'm going to tell you right up front, this article has a lot of good stuff in it, and a lot of really just kind of nonsense that honestly seems to be people like setting up a lawsuit. I don't want to just blanket conclude that, but that's kind of what it sounds like to me. But the next line is, that this Houston attorney, Jim Blackburn, is saying that the practice creates a perception of safety from flooding that might not be justified. Using fill to lift property out of floodplains is, quote, and this is a quote, legal but arguably unethical. It sends the wrong message. And so, like I said, we're not going to go into the rest of the article, but there's two main points here that I think are actually both really good points that are applied not really that well. The first point is that when we change basically when we change the landscape, it changes the floodplain.
Yep.
And this is true. And in Mel, you and I mean, we see this firsthand because where we are, there are currently like 2 or 3 master plan communities going in around our office. Actually one of them really close to our office, but around our office. And, and of course they're, as is the practice around here, they kind of build up the land for the houses to sit on, and then they take down another section of the land for like a retention pond. And that kind of evens things out. But even though it's evening out, between the square footage of raising and lowering, water just doesn't simply appear at the lowest point. It flows there.
Right.
And when we change the landscape, we change how that water goes. And you and I actually saw this firsthand during Harvey because we're both relatively close to one of the 2 reservoirs that were opened up.
Right.
And you saw it because you were on the west side of of one of those reservoirs, and how the water actually backfilled west, even though they opened it to the east. And, but it would have been really fascinating if we weren't all just like in a panic that we're going to get flooded, right?
Right.
I mean,
nobody was thinking of analyzing the.
Yes. Well, I got to admit, I was to an extent.
There.
But, but after I realized my house was not going to get flooded, it was kind of an interest to me, like, wow, look, this water's doing interesting stuff. But on my side of things, I live on the same highway as one of those reservoirs, but the water came out east and then circled around north of me. And so, like if that water had taken a straight line from point A, the reservoir, to point B, where it ended up, it would have gone straight through my house. But it didn't. It went kind of that roundabout way. And that's what happens when we change the landscape.
Yeah, that's, I mean, with all the construction around, I know my house, those retention walls that you were talking about, I think from last year to now, I have 4 of them that are close to my house. And, from the time that, or all the times that it, lots of rain and you had the stream of, flooding in the area. Each time it's different from the streets, how they look and, where the water is coming from. So, I mean, every time, spade goes in the ground, something changes. Right.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that, and you and I tell our customers this all the time, but when they're inquiring about flood insurance is, these maps that we make are helpful. They're really nice guides, but don't put your faith in them. Because, we can make a map today and it's out of date tomorrow. It might not, it might be out of date just a little bit, like such a fraction of a percent, it doesn't really matter, but it's starting to get out of date the second, some bulldozer, starts digging, and the bulldozers are already on the side of the road on my way to work. And so they're going to be digging in the morning anyway. So, these things really change things. And so, we get to a storm like Harvey, which is something we've never seen before. And we see the water react to our landscape in a way that we hadn't seen before again, because it was a completely new situation, circumstances that we as a whole did not foresee. And so we saw people who were in the highest floodplain get 8 feet of water in their house and other areas that were in a lower floodplain get nothing.
Yeah.
And it's all about, where the water is and where it's going and how it's getting there. And just because you're on a high spot doesn't mean that the water does not have to go through you to get to where it's going to be settled.
Right.
So, that's one of the points that they're making here. And the other point is, another good point is that a lot of these floodplains give a false sense of security. Now, I think this attorney is completely overstating it by saying that, building, and what they're talking about with this, Phil, is they're, and you've undoubtedly seen this with the new houses going in. They really build up the land on this property into a little artificial hill to get the house a little bit higher than the rest of the landscape.
Right.
And so, you have the low road, which is usually about the low point, and then, quite a few steps up on this artificial hill that they just built up with dirt to get up there. And that's to get the house several feet higher than it normally would be. Now this attorney's calling this unethical. That's a little ridiculous. I'll be straight on that. But, he is raising a good point that it does give people a false sense of security. And we saw that in Harvey, where a lot of those people who were in the highest zones, were getting just a ton of water in their house. And a lot of them, when they bought the house, were told, oh, you're in a 100-year flood zone or a 500-year flood zone. And so you don't need a flood insurance because it's not going to happen. And that's not how statistics work. So
that's how slick sales work.
Right. And before I go on my rant, because and Mel, you know this, whenever the words, 100-year floodplain are uttered, I go into a rant.
Yeah.
So before I do that, let me give you an opportunity. Do you want to add anything before you can, go make a sandwich? Because I'm going to be a while.
Definitely. I've heard the rant, and it's very accurate. I mean, that's what's thrown around to appease the customer, get the sale, or just kind of have the whatever the question is go away. That 100-year floodplain is thrown out there, and it's thrown out there so much that, I mean, even when we bring it up or if we say something, the customers act like they know it and they're familiar with it. Like, oh, right. Yeah. And it's just, I mean, it's thrown around so much that people believe it, and it's just a myth.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And where this term comes from is first of all, we shouldn't be using the term because it's a misrepresentation of what the facts really are. And I think that if we worded it differently, more people would be buying flood insurance, but I'm going to get to that. What this means is, based on the data that we have, based on the maps that we have, we believe this area is going to have a 1% chance of being flooded this year. Now, notice what I said there. Based on the information we have, the maps we have, we just took a look at the maps, and they're changing all the time. It entertains me to no end when somebody says a 500-year floodplain. We don't have data for 500 years. we don't have accurate data for 100 years. No, we have, some data from that far back, but like the pinpoint accuracy that we have now, we don't have that much data of it. We have several decades and that's it. And so 500-year floodplain is really ridiculous. But again, based on the data we have, based on the maps we have, we believe there's a 1% chance of you getting flooded this year. Now, 1% chance in a year, if you don't understand the way statistics work, you start thinking, okay, so that means once every 100 years, 100-year floodplain.
Yeah.
That's not what that means. That's not the way statistics work. And right now is actually the perfect example of that, because we had, I think, a 500-year event and a 100-year event back to back. There was no 100 years in between them. There was no 500 years in between them. They were 1 year after another, because that's actually how statistics work. If I have a 1% chance of getting flooded this year and I get flooded this year, next year I'm not off the hook. I have a 1% chance of getting flooded next year.
Yeah.
That's the way it is. It's like flipping a coin. If I flip a coin 10 times in a row and it's heads every single time, on my 11th flip, what's the percentage chance that it's going to be heads? 50%.
Exactly.
It doesn't actually change because we've had a streak of something. And so, if we started wording it like that, if we stopped saying 100-year floodplain and started saying you have a 1% chance of being flooded this year, I think people are going to start thinking twice about flood insurance.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's just that phrasing will get them to think about flood in the way they should think about flood, and also be inclined to purchase flood insurance, because you're definitely not doing them any favors by throwing out words like the 100-year floodplain and concentrating on getting the homeowner's policy, and because they're happy they're getting their home, but they really need to understand, as being their agent, that what type of percentage they have for getting flooded, because that call that you're going to get when their house does get flooded, and they're saying, wow, I didn't see this coming, and you're going to have to lie right along with them. Yeah, that was just so weird. And you're going to have to play along, because you can't tell them that, you tried to warn them, because you didn't.
Right. Yeah. And that, and I gotta tell you, that was, every phone call we got in Harvey, and I knew that we were very good about, bring up flood to people. But every single call, I was like, please let me see in the notes that we gave them a quote. We did something, and they refused, or best case scenarios, they had flood insurance, and most of our customers who did get flooded did have flood insurance. But yeah, I was, every single time I was dreading opening it up and like, please tell me we at least tried. And I'm very proud to say that in that case, every time we had tried on everyone that got hit in Harvey. But yeah, that's, and these type of phrases like 100-year floodplain are so ingrained in our vocabulary, especially amongst insurance and realtors. That it just rolls off the tongue, and I don't blame our realtor friends for saying it if they do say it. A lot of times they just haven't thought through what it meant, or haven't had it explain what that actually means, and that, yeah, the customer probably still needs flood insurance. And that needs to be a part of, we as insurance people, that needs to be part of every single home quote and every single home policy sale is, do you have flood insurance? Let me show you a quote for flood insurance. We believe you need flood insurance. And just having that conversation and making sure the customer knows, don't put your faith in 100-year floodplain. Don't put your trust in the fact that your builder raised your house a few feet. That's going to help a lot. And I think it's a good practice. It's going to help a lot, but it's, the day that the reservoirs are opened, the day that we get just the weirdest hurricane I've ever seen in Harvey, it's not going to be enough, and you want to make sure that you're protected. And so, for our insurance friends out there, make it a part of every conversation you have.
Yeah, and it's going to be something that, now's the time, because flooding is so in our psyche with everything that happened so far, and here in Houston and in Puerto Rico and Florida. So bringing it up people know, they know about flood. They know somebody who is flooded.
Yep.
They've seen the struggles to fix the home. And, now's the time just to bring it up to everyone, because that's what we should be doing.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, it is no exaggeration that we sold more flood policies since Harvey than we managed to sell in 2 years before Harvey.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even close. We sold a flood policy today to someone who bought their home policy from us a year ago and didn't want flood at the time, but now it's post Harvey. Now she's rethought it. Now she's looking at the price. It's like, oh, that's reasonable. And that's, that's the other thing about it. And, those of us who are in insurance know this. If your mortgage company, if you're in a zone where your mortgage company doesn't care whether you have flood insurance or not, flood insurance is not very expensive. It's expensive in the areas where the mortgage company is, threatening you that you must get it. That's where it's really expensive. Right. And they don't have a choice, if they have a mortgage, they got to get it. But those people who are not in a low plane where, the mortgage company is like, whatever you want to do is fine. It's not very, it's probably cheaper than your customers think it is. And so, that's whatever you can do to actually get that quote in front of the customer. They're probably thinking that it's more expensive than it is. And so, we've seen a number of people just really pleasantly surprised at how affordable flood insurance is.
Right. And definitely. And, especially when they put it up against the, headache of going through FEMA and, waiting for things to get done, and FEMA asking them over and over if they have insurance and what they need to do, in order to get assistance. In their mind, it becomes much cheaper.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, okay. Well, that about covers that topic. And so, we really do thank you for tuning in each and every week. We are happy to join you. We really do like insurance. We like talking about this insurance, and we think that there's a lot of us out there. And so we do this in order to connect with people, to really, kind of get the discussion going and to share ideas and best practices. And so we are here each and every week, providing this for free. The only thing we ask is that, you tell some people about it. Tell the people in your office about it. We know that you have insurance buddies from across town, and so, have them tune in as well. This week, this might be a really good time to jump on this particular topic. If it's been a while since you've gone through your homeowner's book and made sure that everybody has flood insurance, the more time we have between Harvey and when you ask that question, the harder a sale it's going to be. But Harvey and all of these and all the things that we saw because of Harvey, it is fresh on people's mind. And so, today is going to be a better day to bring it up to them than tomorrow is. And the more we put it off, the harder it's going to be. But it might be a good time to jump through that book and make sure that everyone's at least gotten to see a quote.
That's it. Flood is just it's wild, because even when you deal with other coverages for the home, when you get a call from a customer that you didn't really bring up a coverage to them and they're affected by it, it's that one customer. And with flood, it's a whole slew of your customers all at once. And you definitely want to be able to take that call during a catastrophe and let them know, hey, remember, we took care of you. You're good, and you have coverage.
Yeah.
So
yeah, for sure. All right. Well, thanks again for joining us. We will hopefully, as everything goes to plan, we will catch you again next week. In the meantime, we have a week ahead of us of serving our neighbors by protecting them, their families, and their belongings. And so, let's do the best job we can at that. Make sure that they are understanding the coverage and getting the coverage that they need. And make for those of our friends who are in claims, remember, this is just a job. It seems like just a job for all of us, but when it comes time to a claim, this is an outright crisis for people. And so, we've chosen this business for ourselves, that we are going to make a difference in people's lives by helping to take risk off their shoulders and put it on ours. And so jump out there and make sure that they're taken care of. And we will catch you next week.
Bye.